When Michael Evans moved into his new office in downtown Atlanta, he didn't expect much more than a typical change in environment. He was a well-rounded guy in his late 30s, recently promoted to regional manager at an international marketing firm. He was sharp, composed, and good at keeping professional boundaries, which was why what unfolded over the next few months caught him entirely off guard. On his third day at the office, he met her, Claire Robinson. She worked in the same department as an account strategist. Claire was married to a man named Eric, a software engineer who worked remotely. Michael learned that casually through a lunchroom conversation. Claire was friendly, quick-witted, and the kind of woman who could light up a room without trying too hard. It wasn't until about a month in that Michael started noticing certain things that felt different, subtle, nothing overt. But they began to accumulate, and as they did, the dynamic between them shifted in a way that made Michael feel both curious and uneasy. One day after a morning meeting, Claire stopped by Michael's office. "You really handled that tough client well today," she said, leaning against the doorway with a small smile. "Thanks. You made a great point about the campaign too." "That saved us 5 minutes of back and forth," Michael replied, maintaining eye contact. Claire paused, eyes twinkling. "You always notice the little things. Most people miss them." She didn't linger long, but it was enough to set the tone. What Michael began to recognize were patterns. Not blatant flirtation, not anything that could be accused or labeled, but behaviors that felt slightly off track from typical workplace interactions. There was a particular afternoon during a rainy Wednesday when Claire came into his office to discuss a project. She sat down but didn't jump into work right away. "Isn't it strange how weather can affect your mood?" she said out of the blue. "It's almost like it makes you want to curl up and talk about life instead of work." Michael chuckled. "Yeah, rainy days can do that." She then launched into a story about her weekend, how she and her husband had gone to a dinner party and how odd it felt being in a room full of couples she barely knew. "He doesn't like crowds," she added. "Sometimes I feel like we're just two people coexisting. Does that sound weird?" Michael stayed silent for a second, unsure how to respond. He didn't want to overstep. "Not weird. A lot of couples go through those phases." Claire gave a half smile. "It's comforting to hear that. You're easy to talk to." It was that sentence that lingered with him after she left. That night, Michael replayed the conversation in his head. He wasn't the type to assume a woman was into him just because she was kind or open. But he was also intuitive, and something about the way Claire looked at him, not just with her eyes, but the way her voice softened, the way she angled her body when they sat across each other, suggested a deeper undercurrent. Over the next few weeks, more signs emerged. She began dressing slightly differently, still professional, but there were details that hadn't been there before. Touch of perfume, a new shade of lipstick, a blouse that accentuated her neckline a bit more than usual. Always tasteful but distinct. One Thursday afternoon she dropped by again, this time with coffee. "I figured you could use a boost," she said, handing him a cup with his name written in her handwriting. "Double shot, just how you like it." "Thanks. You didn't have to," Michael replied, surprised. He shrugged. "It's no trouble. You always look out for the team. I thought it was time someone looked out for you." It was a kind gesture, yet it added another layer to the puzzle. Claire never crossed a line, but she was walking very, very close to it. Michael began confiding in his friend and co-worker Jordan Hayes about what he was experiencing. Jordan had been around the block a few more times, older, married, and known for keeping things real. "Sounds like she's developing a soft spot for you, man," Jordan said one evening as they sat at a bar after work. "I don't want to read too much into it. She's married. And she's never said anything inappropriate," Michael countered. "Yeah, but attraction doesn't always come out in words," Jordan replied. "It's in the consistency of attention. The way someone seeks you out, how they subtly test emotional waters. Be careful. Not because she's a bad person, but because emotions are messy." Michael appreciated the wisdom. Still, the behavior continued. There was a team-building event the following month at a resort out in the Georgia mountains. It was a 2-day retreat. Lots of outdoor games, bonfires, and workshops. Michael and Claire ended up seated next to each other during dinner. As everyone laughed and chatted, Claire leaned closer. "I needed this break. I feel more relaxed than I have in weeks," she said, sipping her wine. Michael smiled. "Yeah, it's a good reset." Claire tilted her head slightly. "You ever think about how different life would be if we'd made just 1 or 2 different choices?" He looked at her, unsure how to respond. She continued, "I mean, career paths, relationships. Sometimes I wonder what life would be like if I had met certain people at different times." Her voice trailed off, and her gaze lingered on his for a moment too long. Later that night, Michael stood by the fire pit when Claire approached, wrapped in a sweater. They stood side by side in silence for a few moments, watching the flames. "Michael," she said quietly, "thanks for always being someone I can talk to." He looked at her. "Of course. I value our conversations." She nodded but didn't say more. They stood like that until others joined them, and the moment dissolved into casual laughter and roasting marshmallows. It was then that Michael realized the fourth and most significant indicator: emotional intimacy. It was no longer just friendly chatter. Claire confided in him, leaned on him for emotional support in a way that went beyond workplace camaraderie. Back in Atlanta, Michael decided he needed to gently create some space. He didn't want to hurt her or embarrass her, but he knew it was heading down a road neither of them should travel. He started being more formal in their interactions, limiting one-on-one conversations and making sure their exchanges were always grounded in work. Claire noticed. One morning she knocked on his office door. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. Michael paused. "No, not at all. I just realized I may have blurred some lines, and I want to make sure we're keeping things professional. I respect you, Claire. I respect your marriage. And I'd rather not be a source of any confusion." She looked down, then slowly nodded. "I understand. I guess I got carried away." "There's no judgment," Michael said. "I just want to be clear." She gave a small smile, and for the first time in weeks, there was a touch of distance in her demeanor. Over the next few months, they continued working together. The warmth remained, but the boundaries were clearer. Claire returned to discussing projects without detours into personal life. And Michael found himself respecting her even more for how gracefully she took the shift. One day, as they wrapped up a major campaign, Claire said to him, "Thank you for being the kind of person who doesn't take advantage of blurred lines. I learned something important about myself through all of this." Michael nodded. "We all do. That's how we grow."